Well, I was looking for a way to come to Ukraine, and that led me to get into contact through the consulate with some Ukrainians that were driving donations over here. And they linked me up with a soldier in the Ukrainian army who brought me to St. Michael Monastery, which was the base of operations at the time, and introduced me to Yana Zinkevich, and that started it.
So how long have you been with the battalion now?
Oh, it's over 3 years now, 36, 38 months maybe. Well, my role in the battalion, every hospitaller has to be trained as a medic, and I brought medic experience with me, but the need was greater here for drivers. So currently, my role, 95% of the time, is as a driver, ambulance or off-road vehicle. So, you know, we have sort of two facets of evacuation here. One is medevac, and that's what we consider more of an ambulance type role, where we have a full service ambulance with an advanced medic, advanced equipment, and that's generally hard surfaces, you know, driving, picking up the patients and driving them that last step, either to the stop point or between the stop point and the regional hospital. The other is CASEVAC, and that's a little bit closer to front line. That's basically get an off-road truck, paint it green, put your stickers on it, and then you kind of go further, either to the armored vehicles, sometimes right to the positions. You pick up the wounded there, and generally, you know, a little bit more Spartan medical supplies and equipment, and then the medics there are, you know, first or second in line treating and bandaging. Well, I was an American veteran. Right out of high school, I went into the U.S. Air Force, but I was military police there, and I just did one term of enlistment. Then I was a police officer as a career in the United States and in Detroit. And toward the end of it, I went into the private sector as a police officer, and they trained me, sent me to school to learn to be a medical technician as well. And when the war started, I figured that I was probably qualified to at least come and give a little bit of assistance. As an American, we all came up, you know, watching movies and hearing stories and talking with our elders about how America has always come to the aid of our allies who need help. And when this war started, it was the exact same situation. We have an allies in the exact same theater where our greatest generation was, and they were asking for help. I mean, President Zelensky actually came onto American media and asked if there's anyone who really believes in freedom and wants liberty and justice, they need our help. And, you know, I was a veteran when I was younger, and I never had the opportunity to serve and to do what my heroes had done. And this, you know, as I was kind of reaching that age where maybe the window would be closing for me, this opportunity came, and it was a no-brainer. Well, there are a lot of different types of Westerners who come out here to work. I've actually categorized, you know, what groups they fall into. And there are some who, you know, you don't really know until they show you. And so this was back in late 2022, and there were more Westerners here, and a unit of predominantly Westerners had gone out to Ocheretna. And working there, you stayed in the local clinic, which was serving as kind of a stop point. And one night, things got a little bit hot. There was some artillery sounds going off, you know, in the not too distant area. And some people, it was their first rotation, and they were getting a little bit excited. And one of the Westerners started to kind of scream and panic, and went to the driver and said, "Let's go, let's go." And the driver said, "No, we're not going anywhere." And he said, "No, give me your keys, give me your keys." And then he turned around to the rest of the group and said, "Come with me if you want to live." And of course, nobody did. Well, the battle for Kherson was in full swing, and we were out in that general area. and we were acting as actual squad medics with the squads in the trenches. And we had trenches, but also little dugouts that were independent, and we called them our hooch. And you would sit in the hooch all day, but when things were quiet, you'd kind of pop out and visit between them. And I was out of my hooch visiting with someone, and we were just talking, and we heard BMPs rolling up behind us. And we knew that they were ours because our unit was getting swapped out that day. So we reasoned that this was the replacements, they were coming. And they rolled directly behind our location, and they got just a couple of 100 meters further up the trail, and then we heard in very quick succession 2 very loud booms. And we turned to see smoke coming from that direction. It was no doubt that those BMPs had just struck mines. And what I saw of my peripheral vision was a couple of medics who had already started running from our position in the forest toward that area. So I dropped what I was doing and I jumped in line and started to run too. And there was maybe 5 or 6 of us. And then I also noticed that there were like some big, tall, strapping guys who were standing up out of their hooch and looking around, but they weren't moving. But we got to that area, and we found the sort of smoldering hulls of the BMPs, and some people were climbing, some soldiers were climbing out of them. So we helped them down and started to move them over into a bit of a tree canopy to work on them a bit. And one of the guys that I was working with, Oni, he went up and went down into one of the BMPs to look inside. Well, I had helped one person, and the defender that we had as an ambulance couldn't get very close and wouldn't because there were mines. So I had to kind of mostly carry him 100, 150 meters back to the ambo, got him there, came back. When I came back, they had pulled one of the people out of the ambo that he was essentially a double amputee. He had lost a portion of both legs under the knee, and they were having trouble getting tourniquets fixed. So I helped with that, and just as I was wrapping up with that, I saw that Oni had pulled someone out who was in very bad shape. And they loaded this person onto a stretcher and started to run that person into the forest. We had kind of big hooches in there that were serving as almost like a stop punct. And so we ended up taking 2 of the seriously wounded into that area. And we basically just laid them on the ground near that stop punct hooch. And the doctor came out performing triage and went to the, let me say, the soldier that was in better shape, was pretty complete. The soldier that we then turned to had lost 3 limbs. Both legs were gone above the knee, and one arm, the left arm, was gone above the elbow. And so it only left the right arm, and the soldier was unconscious but still moaning, but completely unresponsive. And so we tried to go to work, and the one medic that I was there with, another hospitaller, was trying to insert an IV into the arm, which, you know, there wouldn't be a good chance of that, but she asked me if I would come over to help. And she was at the right arm. I was kind of on the left side of the body where the left arm would have been. And just as I cycled around and moved over toward her side and went to take the right arm, Oni had moved over right into my position. And at that moment, boom, a shell hit very close to us. And obviously the Russians had heard or seen, somehow knew of this BMP hitting, and they decided that we would be out at that time, and that's when they started to hit us. So the shells started falling, and everyone scrambled and went to the hooch. But Oni yelled to me, "Ow, I think I'm hit." But he kept working. And I sort of dragged the patient a little closer to the hooch, and I stepped down into the hooch but continued to work. And he stayed out, and he spun around to me and he said, "Can you see, am I hit? Like right here?" And he patted on like his right buttock. And I looked quickly. I said, "No, I think you're okay." And so we went to work a little bit more, and then hell started to rain down. So then we finally both kind of retreated into the hooch for a moment, and when we came out, the soldier had passed. And then I looked a little bit further, and he did. He had a little tiny hole in his pants, and a little tiny hole in his. It looked like he'd been shot by a BB gun. But yeah, and then he was excited. He was like, I got hit, I got hit. And he was just like grinning ear to ear, you know, it kind of made his day. But the end result, the doctor who was there was very, very distraught because she felt guilty that, you know, she had worked on this patient and had to kind of forego this patient, and this patient was deceased. But it was obviously what she had to do. But the thing that made it really sad was we didn't know at the time when we started treating the patient, but as we treated, we realized that it was a woman. And I later found out that it wasn't only a woman, it was a Russian woman who had, you can call it defect, back in 2014 or shortly thereafter. She realized what her nation was doing was very wrong, and she had come over to enlist in the Ukrainian army and fight against her own nation. Fight against the invaders from her nation. So she was obviously a very brave and high character soldier. And so I was very, very, very broken up that I know there's nothing that we could have done, but man, I wish that we could have. The driving here is very challenging at every level. Even I described that there's a difference medevac and casevac in the different routes that you drive, but even medevac routes, you'll have roads that have been bombed, roads that have just fallen into gross irrepair. You'll have bridges that are out, and you know, they get creative with how you're going around these bridges and driving on pontoon bridges. So at every level, it's very challenging. At casevac, it's even more so because a lot of times these trails that you have in order to go to the evacuation points or go to the positions, they're traveled both by off-road vehicles and also by tracked and armored vehicles. And while they're wonderful to have, once you get stuck, that's who you want to see coming behind you because you throw a chain on them and they pull you out immediately. However, the damage that they do to those trails, they make them very, very passable for the next tank or the next BMP. But when the next pickup truck after a rain tries to drive where that BMP has just gone, the trail is just totally torn up. There are deep ruts there where, you know, you can't even touch your wheels won't even touch the ground anymore. Your frame hangs up. So it makes the driving very, very challenging, and it makes the conditions very different from day to day. You might travel the same trail 2 hours after you did before, and it looks completely different. There was one time when I was driving in the forest of Kremina, and this is well known as one of the most challenging. And as you drive through this forest, and it's a very vast network of trails, and as you drive through it, there are portions where the trail will split because the tanks have worn this side so badly that they create another route for Avto. And there will be signs that say tank left, Avto right. And you have to follow these signs because if you drive on the wrong way, it's going to be a bad day. And one time I was driving a Land Rover Defender, an armored Defender. It's a very heavy vehicle, but very, very capable off-road. And it was just me and one medic, and he was in the back treating the patient. And we came up to an area where it split, and Avto went right and tank went left. The problem, right where Avto went right, there was one vehicle stuck and another vehicle in front of him trying to pull him out. And our patient was a little bit rough, so we didn't have time to wait, and so I had to go the tank route. And I drove the tank route, and this is a route that I had driven before, because as I said, previously it wasn't a tank route, it was a vehicle route. And now I had to see just how badly they had torn this up. And they had torn it up. And it had recently rained, and there were some deep troughs there that were full of at least a meter of water. I didn't say anything to the people in the truck because I didn't want them to have to worry. But I said a prayer, and I went down and got in the water, and we had the water up almost to the edge of the windows, and I just drove. And I was waiting to hear my medic, start yelling at me and saying, "What are you doing now?" But he didn't even notice. He was, elbows deep in whatever he was doing. And when I got through that, and the kind of two portions of the trail came back together, I had sweat running down my shoulders, and I thought, oh, okay, somebody got me through. I'm convinced I got a guardian angel with me, and they got me through. Well, I'm going to go back to the battle for Kherson and this same incident where the two BMPs had struck the anti-tank mines. I didn't realize until after, when things, you're just reacting in the moment. And then after, when you look back and reflect, is when you kind of realize what had happened. And as I said, there were maybe 5 or 6 medics who had run through there. And afterward, you're thinking, we were running through a minefield. And, maybe we're not heavy enough to set off a mine if we step on it, but we were running, so in full gear. So to see these people who responded was impressive. And what was even more impressive was that, I saw some pretty big strapping guys standing in their hooch, kind of watching what was going on. And 2 of the first medics to arrive were the female Army medic, and also Jana, a female hospitaller who I knew very well, who told me herself one time she wasn't comfortable working Casevac. She didn't want to get that close to the front, but there she was. And she was leading the way, and she was there every step of the way. And then when we were treating the injured that we had been kind of given in triage, the shells started falling. And when Jana looked at me and said that she couldn't get a vein, Jana's face was white. And when I say white, I don't mean, pale. Her face was white. All of the color had drained out of her face. And you could see in her eyes that she was completely terrified. But she was absolutely calm and sound in her thoughts and in her actions. She wasn't running away. She was focused on what she was doing. She was trying to, and that was, for me, very, very impressive, because I don't know if I've ever been that afraid in my life. And I don't know what I would do if I was that afraid. But this woman who, if you looked at her, you would, think that she's some petite, but she's got more nerve and more guts than anyone I've met. There's another incident that where it really impressed me. I had a young paramedic who started working with me, Drone. And he was pretty green and raw when he started working with me. But we had decided early on that we wanted to work as much as we could, and we would go anywhere and do anything that was asked. And he got thrown into the fire, and he really responded. And we had a incident in Stavki where we were called and said, get ready. We have a badly injured that is inbound. So I went out and started the vehicle and got it up by the road, and we were waiting. And a BMP rolled up. And when they opened the door, the hatch, to get the injured out, obviously nobody had been monitoring him while they were transporting, because in the ride over, he had slipped and fallen down into the well of the hatch and was folded up like a pretzel. And immediately my thought, and Drone told me later, his thought was that this guy's, he's gone. But we pulled him out, and when we kind of opened him up, he took a breath. Okay, so we threw him in the car, and Drone looked at me, and Drone normally tells me, like, you know, drive slow, be careful. Drone looked at me and said, just go, as fast as you can, just go. So I jumped in the truck, and we had made that run. We were very busy on that rotation. I knew that that run was 17 minutes. It was 17 minutes from where we would pick up to where we would go and hand off to medevac. And when he said, just go, I just went. And I invested a lot in the suspension system for my vehicle, and it made every dollar worth it that day, because I was absolutely delivering the mail. And we made that 17-minute run in 9 minutes. 9 minutes we were pulling up, and I was just laying on the horn at medevac, just laying on the horn at medevac. And I was driving so fast that there was so much road noise and motor noise that I couldn't hear what was going on in the back with Drone. So when we got there and we pulled him out and we got him up into the ambulance, and the ambulance took off, Drone was, you know, just, his shoulders were sagging, and he was sweating, and his face was all wet, and he was just out of breath. And we finally collected ourselves, and he was like, hey, that was a good job. Yeah, that was a good job. And we found out later the medevac team had called to us, and they said that they had only been like 3 or 4 minutes on the road, and the guy had flatlined. But they had the equipment in the ambo. They hooked up, they put the defibrillator on him, and they brought him back. And then when he got to the hospital, we got an update a couple days later. He was stable. He was being moved to Dnipro. And yeah, so that was, I promise you, every fiber in Drone's body was telling him just to hold on and keep himself kind of steady and safe in the back of that car while we were driving, because that could not have been a fun ride. But yet he was able to work and keep that guy going, so that when it went south in a much better environment for him. So that was, yeah, that was. And on the heels of that, it was on that same rotation where we drove a patient one time, and we delivered them to medevac. And when we delivered them to medevac, we knew that this person was going to need a lot of infusion, and there was, you know, it was a more serious injury. And so we pulled up, and the team started to immediately pepper Drone with questions, because Drone is top-notch medic, and you work with him for 10 minutes and you know that. They started peppering him with questions about, should we do it this way? Should we do it that? And I just said, hey, Drone, go. Jump in the ambo with them and drive to, and he was like, are you sure? I said, go. There's another CASEVAC team right around the corner here. I'll go sit with them, and if we get another call, I'll take one of their medics and we'll go. But just go. And he jumped in the car, and, you know, he jumped in the ambo, and he went with them. And when they came back, they all were like, man, that was really good. That was really good that he came, because so yeah, if you want to talk about somebody who impresses me, that's the guy. So Drone and I were working together as CASEVAC when we were occupying that region. And it started to get pretty hot there, and we were kind of getting pushed back. And there was a small little triangle of land that was, it had a river going on 3 sides of it. So it was basically like an island, and it was triangular in shape. And it was really hot there. And so they had said only armored vehicles can go there. And then they had even had trouble building a pontoon bridge going to it. They had kind of run out of materials. So we were surprised one day when they called us kind of in a bit of a panic and said that one of their team leaders had gone over into that area in their pickup truck to drive someone there or pick someone up, something. It was basically like an errand or whatever. And when they were coming back, something had disabled their vehicle. I don't remember what the details were, but they had jumped out and run for cover. And then they were calling and saying, we need to get out of here quick. Can you come and extract us? So we had what we've been looking for, permission to go onto the Triangle Island. And we jumped in our Jeep and we drove out there. And the first thing that was a challenge was just getting across, because this bridge was hardly a bridge. It looked like some school kids had thrown some planks down into the ditch so they could ride their bicycles across, and then a steep climb up, wet sandy soil on the other side. So it was a challenge, but okay, we got it. And then we got out into the clearing there. And in that clearing, there were burnt out vehicles, there were cows that were laying on their side, bloated, with their legs all pointed. It looked like a Hollywood movie scene where, you expected zombies and, whatever to come walking out. Very, very eerie and totally quiet. And we started driving, and Drone was kind of going by the instructions that they had given us, make a left when you see this, make a right when you see that. And so we drove, and there in the distance we could see the disabled pickup. We said, okay, great. And so we drove up. We thought maybe we could try to hook up and pull it out. But when we pulled up, these two soldiers came running out of the tree line and basically just opened the doors and jumped in and said, go, 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 go. So that made us feel even a little bit more anxious. But we turned around and we started driving out, and that's when your shoulders, you're not trying, but your shoulders just hunch up a little bit on you. You're just kind of waiting for something. Fortunately, it never came. We got back to that same area, and now we had extra weight in the car, but we were going downhill this time, so it wasn't much of a problem. But we got across, and when we got across, it was funny because the vehicle was quiet. You could have heard a pin drop in the vehicle until we got across that river and got to the other side. We got a couple 100 meters the other side of that river, and then suddenly the two soldiers, they started talking up a storm and telling us thank you. And, so yeah, we knew that they were stressed a little bit. And we talked after, Drone and I talked afterward, and we said, it's been a while since we've had one of those real kind of like adrenaline bursts like that. That was good. It kind of put you back on equilibrium again. The trouble with being here so long and working with so many people and seeing so much is that you realize that this isn't something that you want to completely give up. So I've decided to establish a little operation here for after the war, maybe even a little earlier, to try to provide some assistance to veterans and soldiers and their families. And it was a culmination of things that all took place here. One, I saw the soldiers, got to know them. I know that they're hurting. I know that they need help. They need, some sort of rehabilitation. I know that it's going to be worse. We all know that. I also know that there are a lot of soldiers who can drive the heck out of off-road vehicles because they're forced to for their job. And I know that Ukrainians, for the most part, just love to recreate outdoors. So what I've decided to do is to establish a foundation here where we will collect donations and sponsors, and we'll put together at no charge to the soldier, veteran, and his family what we call overlanding. It's traveling with off-road vehicles into remote areas, the Carpathian Mountains, eventually to some of the neighboring countries that have supported Ukraine during the war, and get out and recreate. Give soldiers and veterans a chance to come together maybe they've lost some of their contacts since they separated, and also introduce their families to each other. And what we will be doing will have some elements of what the soldiers did during the war and are doing during the war. And this may give their family members a little peek into what they were doing. And the nice thing is it will be done in an area where there's no stress, there's no fear, there's no looking where you're driving and, watching the skies for what's above you, but just a good time, just recreating and rehabilitating. So that's going to keep me busy. That's how I will extend my service to Ukraine. I love the Ukrainian people. I know I have to give much more back, and of course it's going to give me a lot of joy too. But the name is Euroshield Overland. The website is euroshieldOverland.org, and if you have any interest, check it out. If you have any ability, help it out.